you ever felt the pull of something so alluring, so immediate, that it drowned out everything else? Reason, peace, even your sense of self. Imagine standing at the edge of a still lake, and in its surface you see a reflection, not of your body, but of everything you've ever wanted. Not just love or pleasure, but power, recognition, control. And yet, when you reach to touch it, the image vanishes. This is the nature of desire. Ancient sages knew this struggle well. Plato spoke of eros, a longing that begins in the flesh, but can, if we guide it rightly, lead us to the divine. And the Buddha taught that craving is the root of all suffering, the thread that binds us to a world of illusion and rebirth. Today, we're going to step quietly into this ancient conversation. What does it mean to overcome lust, not merely sexual hunger, but the deeper hunger beneath it? What would it mean to live unchained from desire, no longer grasping, no longer needing the world to complete us? Welcome. Take a breath. Let's explore how the conquest of lust might just be the key to conquering the world, not by force, but by awakening. When we hear the word lust, we often think of it in narrow bodily terms. A surge of desire, a flash of heat, a hunger for touch or closeness. But lust is not limited to the flesh. It is a deeper, more subtle force, a craving for intensity, for possession, for something outside ourselves that we believe will finally quiet the ache within. Lust, in its truest form, is not just about the body's appetite. It is the soul's yearning for fulfillment, misdirected toward what it can see and touch. Plato understood this intimately. In his Symposium, he speaks of eros, not as mere sexual desire, but as a divine longing. According to Socrates, love begins with the body, yes, but it is meant to ascend from the beauty of a single form to all beautiful forms, to the beauty of minds, and finally to beauty itself, pure, eternal, unchanging. But most of us remain caught at the lowest rung of that ladder. We confuse the spark of eros with the fire itself. We seek satisfaction in fleeting things, in faces, bodies, experiences, without realizing that our desire points to something far beyond them. The beauty we chase is a shadow of a higher beauty, a whisper of a deeper truth. And in that confusion, lust tightens its grip. We become restless, always reaching, never arriving. It is as if we are parched, but instead of turning to the spring, we drink from mirages in the sand. The Buddha, too, saw this restlessness. He called it tanha, thirst. It is the second of the four noble truths that suffering arises from craving. And like Plato, the Buddha did not condemn desire because it is immoral, but because it is delusional. We crave sensory pleasure, existence, even non-existence, constantly reaching for something to make us whole. But in clinging to what is impermanent, we create our own dissatisfaction. Like someone grasping a flame, we are burned not because the fire is evil, but because we misunderstand what it is. To the Buddha, the path to liberation is not to repress lust, but to understand it, to see its true nature as empty, transient, and incapable of delivering the peace we seek. Imagine a man standing before a beautiful painting, moved by its grace. But instead of contemplating its form and meaning, he tries to possess it, scratching at the canvas, trying to pull it off the wall and make it his own. He ends up destroying the very thing he loved. This is the tragedy of lust. When it remains untamed, it seeks to hold what was meant only to be beheld. It seeks permanence in what was never meant to last. But what if the problem is not in the desire itself, but in where it's pointed? What if, as Plato and the Buddha suggest, we could learn to see clearly, to look past the mirage and glimpse the real? What if the fire of desire could be redirected, not extinguished? To do that, we must first see the world for what it truly is. We must step out of the illusion. And so, we turn now to that illusion itself, the world that lust binds us to. Let us look more closely at the mirage we mistake for reality and ask, what is it that we are truly clinging to? To understand the weight of lust, we must first examine the world it binds us to. Lust, in its essence, is not merely desire. It is a deep entanglement with the visible, the tangible, the fleeting. It convinces us that satisfaction lies just beyond our grasp, in a body, a moment, a sensation. But what if the world that lust so desperately clings to is not as real as it seems? Plato likened our earthly existence to shadows on the wall of a cave. In his famous allegory, prisoners sit chained in darkness, watching flickers of light and form projected before them. They believe the shadows are reality because it is all they have ever known. To Plato, the physical world, the world of sights and sounds, of beauty and pleasure, is much the same. It is not the true world, but a pale reflection of it. The philosopher is the one who turns away from the wall, who breaks his chains and climbs toward the light, toward the realm of pure forms, where truth resides untouched by time or decay. Lust, then, is the chain that holds us in place. It seduces us into believing that the shadow is enough, that the body can give what only the soul longs for. The Buddha offered a parallel vision. In his teachings, the world is not only transient, but illusory. This is the concept of Maya, the veil of illusion that covers reality. And at the heart of this illusion is tanha, craving, thirst, lust. Because we desire, we cling. Because we cling, we suffer. Like a man reaching for the moon's reflection in water, we mistake the shimmering for the substance. And the more we grasp, the more ripples we create, disturbing the clarity of the mind. The Buddha does not say the world is evil, only that it deceives. What we see, touch, and hunger for is impermanent. The pleasure fades, the beauty withers, and still we chase. Consider a person who spends years obsessed with the perfect relationship. They search endlessly for a partner who will finally complete them, someone who will never change, never leave, never disappoint. But relationships, like all things in the world, are fluid. People evolve, emotions shift, expectations are unmet. The pursuit becomes a cycle of disappointment and renewed craving. This is how lust binds us. Not with iron chains, but with golden ones, beautiful, shining, and yet unyielding. It ties us to a world of change while promising permanence. It promises depth but delivers only surface. To overcome lust, then, is not merely to resist temptation. It is to see clearly. It is to pierce the veil and recognize the illusion for what it is. Not to hate the world, but to no longer be deceived by it. Lust keeps us hypnotized, circling the same illusions. But with awareness, we begin to awaken, and once the mirage begins to fade, a deeper question arises. If the world is not what it seems, then what is the self that desires it? Is our longing truly ours, or just a wave passing through the mind? To answer this, we must look not outward, but inward. We turn now to the hidden architecture of desire itself, the psychological roots that lie beneath the surface, shaping our cravings from within. If you're finding meaning in this journey, feel free to pause and share your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to know what this stirs in you. Let's continue. Desire does not begin in the body. It begins in the mind, in the quiet spaces between memory and expectation, in the unfinished sentences we carry from childhood. Lust, though it may rise in a moment of physical longing, is often shaped long before it appears. Beneath the surface, it is crafted by wounds and hopes, by our hunger to be seen, to be held, to feel significant. To understand lust, we must look not only at what we want, but why we want. What is it, truly, that we are aching for? Plato offered a model of the soul that illuminates this hidden structure. In his dialogue, The Republic, he speaks of the tripartite soul, the appetitive, which craves pleasure, the spirited, which seeks honor, and the rational, which longs for truth. When reason rules the soul, desires are not destroyed but harmonized. But when the appetites dominate, the soul becomes disordered, chasing pleasure like a ship without a rudder. In the modern mind, this disharmony often takes the shape of compulsion. We swipe, we scroll, we search for bodies, for affirmation, for escape. But Plato might ask, is it really the body we want, or something deeper? Recognition, perhaps, meaning. A glimpse of beauty that reminds us we are not alone. The Buddha, with equal clarity, diagnosed desire as a symptom of misperception. Craving arises, he taught, not because things are pleasurable, but because we wrongly believe they will satisfy us. In meditation, one watches desire rise like a wave, then sees it fall. In that stillness, something becomes clear. We are not the wave, we are the ocean beneath it. The practice is not to kill desire, but to see through it, to understand it. When we no longer identify with it, its power fades. In this way, desire is transformed, not into repression, but into wisdom. we realize that we do not need to grasp every flicker of pleasure. We can watch it pass, like wind through the grass. Even in modern psychology, we find echoes of these ancient truths. Freud spoke of libido as the life drive, and Jung saw it not only as sexual energy, but as a force that, when integrated, leads to individuation, the journey toward wholeness. A person driven by lust may, in truth, be searching for lost parts of themselves, intimacy once denied, worthiness once withheld. The desire for another becomes a mirror, revealing our own fragmentation, our longing to return to something we can't quite name. Imagine a man who spends years chasing relationships, believing that the next one will finally make him whole, but every ending leaves him emptier than before. One day, in silence, he begins to ask, "What am I truly longing for?" And slowly he realizes it is not another person but himself, his own forgotten tenderness, his own buried grief. In that moment, lust becomes a lantern, not to run from but to follow, down into the heart of his own soul. Desire, then, is not the enemy, it is a messenger. It shows us where we are still broken, still searching. But to follow that message wisely, we must learn to turn the fire inward, to redirect it, to transmute it. And this brings us to the heart of the path, not the suppression of lust, but its elevation. How do we take this burning and make it sacred? How do we ascend the ladder of love, from the body to the eternal? Let us climb. Desire, when left untended, burns wild, scorching the edges of our peace, consuming whatever it touches in pursuit of fleeting satisfaction. But fire, in itself, is neither good nor evil. It is energy, raw, radiant, and full of potential. The question is not whether we should extinguish this fire, but whether we can guide it. This is the heart of transcendence, not the denial of lust, but its transformation. To move from compulsion to clarity, from hunger to harmony, we must learn to redirect the flame within us towards something higher, something enduring. Plato saw this path clearly. In the Symposium, he describes love, eros, as a kind of divine madness, a stirring of the soul toward beauty. But this journey begins in the body. It starts with the attraction to physical beauty, and if the soul is guided by reason, it climbs ever upward, from the beauty of one person to the beauty of all souls, then to noble laws and institutions, and finally to the form of beauty itself, unchanging and eternal. In this vision, lust is not an enemy to be crushed, but a force to be elevated. It is the ladder by which the soul ascends, so long as it does not mistake the first rung for the summit. Plato teaches that the same energy that binds us to the body can also liberate us, if we allow it to become philosophical love, a yearning not for possession but for truth. In the teachings of the Buddha, this redirection takes a different but equally profound form. Instead of climbing upward through forms, the Buddhist path turns inward, toward stillness, toward emptiness, toward the extinguishing of craving altogether. But this does not mean repression. The Buddha warned against extremes. Indulgence and denial are both forms of bondage. The middle way teaches us to observe desire, to sit with it gently, to watch it arise and pass without being swept away. Over time, through mindfulness and concentration, the fire of lust loses its grip. It does not vanish by force, it dissolves by understanding, and in its place a new energy emerges: metta, loving kindness, karuna, compassion. These are not the fires of wanting, but the warmth of presence. Imagine someone who, for years, chases relationship after relationship, convinced that love must come wrapped in intensity and passion. They feel alive in the heat of desire, but empty once it fades. One day, in a moment of stillness, they begin to ask not what they can get, but what they can give. Not how someone else can complete them, but how they might care for another being, not out of need, but out of grace. In that shift, lust begins to soften. It transforms from hunger into offering, from a reaching hand into an open heart. They have not lost their fire. They have simply learned to let it light the way, rather than burn the path beneath them. To redirect the fire within is to reclaim our deepest energy, not by suppressing it, but by refining it. When lust becomes longing for the eternal, when craving gives way to clarity, we begin to transcend, not by floating above the world, but by moving through it with awareness, with gentleness, with depth. This is the quiet power of those who have overcome, not the absence of desire, but its rebirth as wisdom. And yet, for many, this journey does not begin with philosophy. It begins with suffering, with the ache of unmet desire, the sorrow of endless grasping. What happens when lust leads us not upward or inward, but into sorrow? When the fire turns to ash? To answer this, we must now return to the ground of our being, the soul itself, and ask what remains after craving has done its work. In that stillness, something waits, something deeper than desire. Like the silence that follows the last crackle of flame, it calls us home. In the quiet unfolding of our reflection today, we've traveled from the surface heat of lust to the still deep waters of the self. We've seen how both Plato and the Buddha point us toward a truth that remains hidden behind our cravings. That desire, when left unchecked, binds us to illusion. It makes us chase shadows and forget the light. But they also show us that this same fire, if understood and transformed, can become a path, not to possession but to awakening. To overcome lust is not simply to deny pleasure. It is to see clearly. It is to recognize that no external thing, not a body, not an experience, not even an ideal, can complete us. The beauty we chase outside is a reflection of something already within. When we stop grasping and begin observing, when we turn the energy of longing inward, we don't lose our fire, we purify it. And what arises in its place is not emptiness, but presence, not dullness, but a luminous stillness. This is the victory we speak of, not over others, or over the world in its outer forms, but over the restless part of ourselves that forgets who we are. The victory of one who sees the mirage for what it is and walks gently past it. The quiet triumph of a soul no longer pulled in every direction, but anchored in clarity and peace. As the Stoics remind us, he who conquers himself is the mightiest warrior. And as Viktor Frankl beautifully observed, when we are no longer able to change a situation, we are challenged to change ourselves. So, if you find yourself yearning, reaching, searching for something just beyond your grasp, pause, breathe. Ask not what you are missing, but what in you is being called to grow. The path of overcoming is not harsh. It is not about suppression or shame. It is about seeing with new eyes. It is about remembering that the greatest victory is not loud. It is quiet. It is the moment you realize that you are already whole. If this exploration touched something in you, consider subscribing or sharing your thoughts below. Your voice is part of this unfolding conversation. Thank you for walking this path today. May you leave not with answers, but with deeper questions, and the peace that comes from asking them with an open heart.